Hey, this is John Lee Dumas, the founder and host of Entrepreneurs on Fire. And if you're wanting to learn how to embrace change and navigate through disruption as a leader, then listen to the Leadership is Changing podcast with my good friend, Denis Gianoutsos. He's prepared to ignite.
Welcome to Leadership is Changing. Each week, we and our guests provide information and insights through exploring leading change. This is taking your leadership to another level by finding the balance between executive excellence and personal well-being through stories that inspire real change. It's time to adapt in our fast-moving world when leadership is changing with your host, Denis Gianoutsos.
Hey there, listeners. Well, welcome to 2025. I want to say thank you for tuning in to the Leadership is Changing podcast. But as we step into a brand new year, I want to take a moment to reflect on the incredible journey we've had in 2024. Over the past year, I've been privileged to feature some amazing guests on this podcast, leaders, change makers, and innovators who shared their wisdom, experiences, and insights. And together we've explored what it means to lead in today's ever-changing world. Over the next month, we're going to bring you some of these highlights. And in the Highlights 2024 episodes, we're bringing you some of the most impactful moments and key takeaways from 2024. Now, these highlights capture the essence of what this podcast is all about, helping leaders like you thrive in times of change and complexity. Now, whether it's tips on being courageous, thinking outside the box, adapting, or navigating transitions to higher levels of leadership, these snippets are sure to inspire and energize you for the year ahead. And of course, these highlights are just the tip of the iceberg. If something resonates with you, I encourage you to go and check out the full interviews from 2024 to dive deeper into the incredible conversations we've had. So let's get into it. Here are the highlights from 2024 on the Leadership is Changing podcast.
I am straight west of Chicago out of Illinois, in the States, obviously. So that's where I'm from, man. Grew up south of the city in the burbs, lived in the city, and then got domesticated with kids and a dog and moved back out to the suburbs. So that's kind of where I'm at.
Chicago, I love it. It's a nice place. My brother and his wife and kids were living there for about 4 years because we grew up in the coffee industry. And so he started his own brand called Mojo Coffee. And there's, I think, 3 cafes within the city. So in South Wack, is that the right way of saying that street? Yeah.
Yeah. So wait, that's your brother-in-law?
That's my brother.
Dude, I love Mojo Coffee. So
Oh,
we did not plan this for listeners, but that was in the building that I worked in. And that was my go-to coffee place. I was just talking about the other day. I'm like, man, I wish they had one of those Mojo coffees out in the suburbs because I went there every day. Best cappuccino in the world. Highly recommended. You ever go to Chicago, go grab one. 200 South Wacker. They really cool place.
yeah.
So,
Excellent. Yeah. And you know that you can actually have the coffee delivered to you, like if you do sort of plunger coffee and things like that. I know it's not a cappuccino, but or even beans, you can actually have it delivered to you. But you and I can talk about that offline later. But anyone else in the US listening, you can actually have it. But reach out to me and I can sort of give you the link and all that stuff too. But maybe I should say to my brother, hey, you just sponsored this episode, mate. So it's all good. Hey, Ryan, I've given the listeners a little bit of an introduction to you, but we'd love to hear more about your background. I understand that you're the founder and CEO of Whale Boss. Tell us more about what you've done, where you've come from, but also what you do today.
sure. Yeah. So effectively, like I kind of mentioned, I grew up in the lower middle income, blue collar type environment. I mean, my mom was a teacher, my dad was a police officer, and they really instilled that Midwest hard work ethic into me. Right. So started like my earliest jobs when I was delivering papers and a busboy. And then, had one of my first sales jobs selling shoes effectively, like Al Bundy on that old show, Married with Children. Right. And so anyways, long story short, I progressed there, started into sales right out of school with like 100% basically commission job. I got a $1,500 draw and started off there. I love getting for performance because I saw my parents work their butts off their entire life and only get incremental increases or elevations. And then so from there, I moved up the chain in terms of an individual contributor and then basically progressed into leadership. Within leadership, I ran a revenue team mid-market, Then I was tasked to, I turned that around. It was underperforming, doing really bad. And then was tasked to start an enterprise team, grew that from 0 to 30 million in ARR in 5.5 years with 4 salespeople. From there, I left and basically started helping companies deploy those revenue systems in their business. And then fast forward, it was about 3.5 years ago, 15 months ago, I got infatuated with the use of AI in growing a company because, one of the things I always had to do, I was never like in a company that had tons of resources. I was never for a venture back company or anything. So I always had to get scrappy and creative in terms of how to get results. And so once I saw AI democratize, I'm like, oh, this is the next level, right? And so now I'm helping companies basically integrate AI into their people so they can create almost like a superhuman workforce to 2x their output and even giving back 10 hours plus a week. So that's what we want to focus on today. That's my history. And I've had lots of bumps and bruises and excitement along the way with all that, but it was a great journey, man. And we're still pushing forward.
Excellent. And the name Whale Boss, where's that come from?
Yeah, it's a great question. And I'm actually in the process of considering, do I rebrand my company name? Because when I first started, my core focus was on that enterprise sales motion. And so the whole idea is you want to get more whales in the sales vernacular, right? Since you always want to get the biggest ones. And so that's where Whale Boss came in because folks were always like asking me like, how did I achieve those results with the team, a really small team? And I'm like, we just systematically replicated and increased the size of our whales. And so that's kind of how it came about.
Yeah, very good. That's an interesting concept and a thought, it's really quite good, but it stands out. It's different than just sort of the other kind of names, a lot of them out there, which is, I find sometimes are quite boring, but that's different. And yeah, it's nice.
Thanks.
Yeah, yeah. And you've got a podcast as well?
Yes, I do. It's called The Scale Up Show. And so I've been interviewing tech CEOs on there, specifically AI founders. And then I share, tips, tricks, and insights in terms of integrating AI into work, because I believe it's one of those things that's only going to happen once in our lifetime. And it's happening so fast. So the more I could give back with what I'm learning to people, and that's what I get excited about.
Yeah, and we're hearing about AI all the time. Just a few years ago, there was the buzzword about cloud computing and things like that, right? It was a buzzword. Now it's AI. Leaders today, how much should they be investing into AI? How much knowledge should they know? Should they become AI savvy, or is just something that's going to pass as well? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I know this is not going to just pass and be a trend just because the results that you're seeing have never been seen with anything at this scale before this fast. And so if I'm a leader, and here's the thing, Dennis, I'm starting to present to executive groups first or executive teams because they don't even know how to use it. Right. And so kind of the way I approach it is when I say AI, let me be clear on what I'm talking about, because there's 40 different variations or 4,000 variations of what AI could actually mean. What I'm talking about is integrating AI into your work. And so that could be ChatGPT, that could be Microsoft Copilot, that could be Gemini, right? And so what's happening is all these products are now available and are starting to get into PowerPoint, Excel, Word, if you're on the Microsoft side, or Google Workspace on the Microsoft side, right? However, like most people are looking at this as just a productivity play. What happened with the internet, the internet was transformative as well. But they're looking at that. Whereas where I'm seeing things differently is like for the first times in our life, I'll give you a real world example. I assume since there's so many leaders on here, I assume most folks are pretty passionate about learning, right? And so or reading books, right? And so one of the things that I did the other day, I actually did this while I was shaving, right? Hope it's not TMI, but took a total of 12 minutes. And, one of the things I'm working on for my business is creating more systems. So I'd never had a chance to read the eBook Revisited, or eMyth Revisited, I should say, not ebook, eMyth Revisited. So I said, okay, I put on the voice app for ChatGPT. And I said, effectively, I want you to summarize the entire book in 2 pages, identifying the key points with examples on how to do that. And basically it read it off to me, right? So I used the voice app with the verbal capability, read it off to me. And then I said, okay, this is the stage of business that I'm at. These are my goals, and this is what I accomplished. Now customize a recommendation based on that book for my business specific to that. Then it gave me a recommendation of exactly how to execute the book or the learnings from the author that took 20 years to learn, right? Then the last and final step is I said, okay, now create actual worksheets or checklists on how I could execute that for your recommendation. And then boom, it gave me that as well. So literally in 12 minutes, I took a book, had it, 20 years of knowledge, whatever it took to get there, right? Had it customized to me and my business. And then I actually had the implementation tools to do that. And that all happened in 12 minutes, effectively for free.
Hmm.
So that's one microcosm of what's possible. And then you talk about work, and there's a million other use cases we could talk to, but that's what gets me really excited about it.
Thank you very much. I am grateful to be here because leadership is something that needs to be discussed, taught, and improved on throughout the world.
You mean you're not born as a leader?
I believe some people's attitudes are, but not necessarily them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, that's actually a good way of putting it. Yeah, very good. Hey, look, I always ask this question with the people I interview around the world. Whereabouts are you around the world today?
I am in Orange County, California, in the United States.
Excellent. Well, welcome. And so one of the things I always start off with is for you to share a little bit more about your background. So tell us what you've done, what you do today, and just to help the listeners understand who Joe is.
Absolutely. Thank you. I'm an electrical engineer that ended up as a sales trainer for very large companies. So you can tell they go hand in hand, electrical engineering and sales. But I got into electrical engineering because I didn't have a direction after I got out of high school. And my mom said, why don't you go learn how to put together all those electronic components that you took apart throughout your living in this house? And then not knowing that electrical engineering had nothing to do with that, but I ended up going through and doing it. So if you're not leading yourself, someone will lead you. And it's not the best part. But I've gone through electrical engineering. I will tell you that I ended up becoming a leader in the company after I graduated that scooped me up while I was there and forced into it early on. But I did electrical engineering, did criminal defense, but I worked in sales capacity and customer support, then went into the automotive industry. Since then, I have expanded into training companies on leadership, attitude, mindset, and overall sales increases with profitability.
So you did sales and that in criminal defense. Were you looking out there to try and sell to criminals? How does that work?
We were selling the outcome
Mm-hmm.
of their court case. So the owner of the law firm had built a law firm and advertised, and people would call in. So I ran the inside call center that would take the phone call, gather the information, and schedule the appointment for the outside sales team to go meet with the family of those people that were incarcerated and what have you. So we did that, and it took us 90 days to triple their income. And then we ran it for 2 years and became one of the largest in the nation at what we were doing.
Excellent. Now, I also understand you have a podcast. I think the title of the podcast is Sales Geniuses. Is that the name of it?
Yeah, Sales Genius.
Genius.
So is the podcast title. But yeah, that's where I talk with people about sales, marketing, branding, attitude, and mindset. And I bring in guest speakers all the time because it started out as a private group for me on Facebook with people. And then everybody gets tired of listening to the same person over and over again. So I started bringing in guest trainers. And then I said, I have all this content from all these people, and I'm going live and putting it out on YouTube, but why am I not making it available for people on a podcast? And then transfer all my episodes up there. But I think we're up at episode 158 at the time of this taping.
Awesome. Well done. Attitude, mindset. Let's talk about it from a leadership perspective. How important is attitude and mindset?
So I believe mindset is what determines whether or not how high you can go to expect for your team. Like if you believe you are a number one achieving individual, that's one of the first steps in your own mindset to see. Because we tend to, if you look at people, leaders go in, and let's say a leader walks in with a 9 out of 10 mindset. Okay. You're not going to find a bunch of people that walk in with a 9 out of 10. But that's actually the cap of the team, meaning that most people will only get to a 7 or 8 so they can play around your level, but they don't typically try to exceed the level of the leader that's there. So it's always crucial that the mindset of the leader be as high as possible and, as ethical as possible.
And that mindset of the leader being high as possible, in other words, if the leader's mindset is a 7 or an 8, isn't that really the lid on the organization, sense that the organization really can't go above it if the leader is at a 7 or an 8?
Oh, absolutely. It's the ceiling. It's the concept of A player, B player, C player, right? An A player can always hire another A player because they're not afraid of that person. But a B player will never hire another B player, or especially not an A player. So if your mindset and your drive and determination, right, which is everything comes from that mindset, is at a 10, you're not scared of an 8, 9, 10 because you're already there at the maximum possible. But if you are a 7, you are intimidated even to interview an 8, and you will unconsciously sabotage yourself or them in the interview so that they don't come in and make you look bad. It's called self-preservation.
Yeah. Or ego, or come on. It's just like, because
in the sales world, I say ego is edging gross out.
right. Nice.
Right? You let gross leave the deal.
Yeah.
Because you're too busy trying to be you.
Well, that's right. I think people are getting in their own way. And that's the same thing with what you just shared about interviewing people, bringing people onto the team. I think a smart leader, I'd love to get your thoughts on this. A smart leader is really one leader who hires better people than themselves, hires people who are going to go really well to different levels, not get intimidated by them. What are your thoughts on that?
100%, right? It's one of those situations where I don't believe in the way my mindset's set up. I have strengths and I have abilities. If somebody has a strength the same as mine, I'm not intimidated by it. I still think iron sharpens iron. But if somebody has a skill set that is one of my weaknesses, I want to hire them right away. I don't even have to second guess it because I know we need to get to that fully rounded and fully deliverable for the customer is going to be that way. So if I'm great at leading the team and conducting sales, but the actual mundane job of inputting into the system, pushing it through our CRM, getting them set up for an onboarding call and all those other things, if I can't stand doing that and I find someone who is, right, then I look and say, that's going to benefit my team. That's going to benefit the company because that person enjoys doing the parts that I don't like doing.
Yeah.
Where a lot of times you'll see leaders hire a bunch of people like themselves, but less than. And so that leaves you with things that fall through the cracks and an organization that's ultimately doomed.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Leadership is Changing with your host, Denis Gianoutsos. Each week, we and our guests provide information and insights through exploring leading change, inspiring executives and leaders to adapt and lead a bigger game in a fast-moving world.